Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
Is this thing on? All right. Hey. It's Josh and Austin with the Invested Dads Podcast, here to bring you a special episode where we are going to talk about the Secure Act. So on December 20th, 2019, President Trump signed a bill into law that had just gotten passed from the Senate, and earlier in the year, the House passed it, I believe, talking about some major changes coming up to retirement plans and retirement planning. So it's called the Secure Act, like I said, which stands for setting every community up for retirement enhancement, right? That's what it stands for, Josh.
I think they added the enhancement at the end just to make it secure.
Instead of secure.
Yeah.
So I think in total it's got about 29 new provisions or major changes in 20 different sections. But Josh and I are here to share some of our thoughts on the key changes that are going to impact you and your retirement plan. And we're not going to talk about everything, but there's a more detailed article from Michael Kitces that we'll link in the show notes that has a little bit more detail on some of these items, but we're going to hit the ones that we think are most impactful for you guys. So Josh, start us off.
All right. So like Austin said, this Secure Act was something that had been pushed for a while. There's some pieces in here that some people in our industry were really pushing for, trying to get passed, and then along with it, they've added some additional changes into this thing. So again, like Austin said, it just happened right at the end of 2019, and so they're still being debated and discussed on some of these changes and what it really means. They're waiting on some kind of recommendation letters from the IRS on how some of this will play out. So as of right now, this is kind of where we're at and what we're hearing and seeing, and there's kind of four major things we're going to talk through. And again, there's a lot that impacts our industry, but we really want to focus on things that'll impact you and your retirement. So the first piece is changes to 401k plans. And so a lot of you will have at your company a 401k plan, and that's your retirement plan at work. So one of the big changes they have there is they're now allowing lifetime income within the 401k. So a lifetime income in the 401k really means annuities. And we'll get into annuities in a separate podcast, really on what annuities are, what they do, what they're beneficial for, why they're good, why they're bad, all that stuff. But for a 401k plan, the big deal was a company that has a 401k plan, they're the fiduciary, which means they're responsible for maintaining that, making sure there's good investments in that plan. They were worried about annuities because if the insurance company struggled or went out of business, they were liable for that because they're the ones that picked it. So this new law has enabled a safe harbor protection, which protects the fiduciary as long as they do their due diligence and have an annual review of that company, and they look for certain things within that company, whether they meet the requirements by the government for insurance regulations, that stuff. They're protected. They can't be sued if that insurance company goes out.
So safe harbor as in contrast to a really dangerous harbor, like where your boats get knocked together.
Yeah. So the safe harbor is just a term meaning that, in a sense, they're protected. So
Josh,
think of a safe harbor. It protects you from the waves in the wake. And
so
you're
take
safe.
1 minute and kind of tease out what we will talk about in more detail in a future episode about annuities. So kind of name a couple pros, a couple cons, and just kind of your overall thoughts as your opinion as a CFP.
Yeah. So this lifetime income is the benefit of the annuity. So within the 401k, a participant could say, okay, I have $500,000 in my 401k. I'm looking to retire, and I want it to provide an income stream that will not run out during my lifetime or my lifetime and my spouse's lifetime. An annuity provides that. So annuity provides a guaranteed stream of income from the start point on through your life. And so that's the protection piece that this insurance company is offering, saying, we'll take your $500,000 from you, and in exchange, we'll give you a set monthly amount from now until you pass away. And so that's the positive side that somebody look for, is saying, I don't know how long this $500 will last me. It would be nice if I could get a guaranteed amount. So that's the benefit.
So an annuity company would make money on that because they would, in a perfect world, have to issue less money than they would make on it investing it on their own.
Right, and they
spread.
get the $500,000 up front, so
Right.
they can invest it
Right.
and hopefully grow it faster than what they're paying out to you. So
Yeah.
they look at the actuarial tables, so what's your life expectancy, and say, if that's the average, hopefully some of the people won't live that long. Some may live longer, but
That's a morbid thought.
I know that's actuarials are they run those numbers are very
Yeah.
they run that and think to themselves, this person may or may not get there. If they don't, we end up better off. If they live past it, if we can't grow the money enough, we may be out. But if they have enough people pooled together, we'll be okay. And that's what the insurance company is really doing, is pooling a bunch of people together.
So it's a lot like insurance in general. Yeah, we'll have a full episode dedicated to annuities and investing in annuities in a future episode. So stay tuned for that. We'll get to that soon. Another thing that's coming up that's a part of the changes to 401k plans is that statements are going to need to show projected income payments, kind of relating to that guaranteed income, as well as the current balance. So right now, if you get a statement, it's going to say, Josh, your current balance is $498,000, and that's it. So it's just going to show $1. But the new rule is going to say that has to say, hey, that's going to be $400 per month for the rest of your life or whatever, right?
Yeah. And if you are in a employer that has a pension plan, so like if you're a teacher and you're with the government retirement system there, in Ohio, it's the STRS, that has a pension piece, and they actually show you a monthly payout for that. And so that's what they're trying to get to, is the 401k also is saying, okay, we want to show you a potential stream of income that could be derived from this. An annuity could play into that. And I think a lot of times they're going to use that annuity calculation for that payout. And that's something I know you and I have discussed, is how are they going to make those assumptions? Because there's a lot that goes into that assumption.
Yeah, that's the biggest point for me is, first of all, I think that this part of the bill isn't going to take effect right away because the government's still working out the details of what that's going to look like and what the calculations are going to be. But I hope that they're extremely transparent in that calculation that is going to be required from all 401k plan providers.
Yeah. And is it a set one for everybody, or does each 401k plan just have to show you their assumptions in a back page, and then they can do whatever they want?
Right. I'm hoping that transparency is there, but also I think consistency between plans would be the most beneficial for consumers, because if you take a job somewhere else and roll your 401k over, you could be looking at it calculated one way, and then you look at roughly the same dollar figure calculated a completely different way and have a different number. And I'm hoping that that's not the case.
And I mean, the plus side to it, though, is, that's how people live their life. They don't look at a lump sum and say, oh, that's going to last me with, a future discounted cash flow analysis. This is what I have.
That's how I live my life.
That's right. But the average person says, okay, what do I get each month? How am I going to live? They look at it like a paycheck. And so I think this will be beneficial as long as the assumptions are, a conservative assumption. It'll be able to them to say, okay, my Social Security is going to give me X. I'm going to get this from my retirement plan. Those together, am I going to enjoy my retirement with that income?
Right.
So I think it'd be nice, but they did announce it's going to start 12 months after they complete the review with no timetable on the review.
So 2029, this
who
should
knows
go
when.
into effect.
Yeah, who knows?
Josh, talk about MAPS.
MEPS.
Oh, MEPS.
MEPS.
MAP.
MEP is short for Multiple Employer Plans. And if you are a person working in a small company, this is where you'd see the benefit. So up to this point, to start a 401k plan, it's kind of cost inhibited for a small company. There's a lot of startup costs. There's an ongoing testing that has to happen every year for a 401k plan. So this Secure Act allows small businesses that are unrelated or unaffiliated to group together and do a 401k plan as a whole. So you'd have 4 or 5 companies together all in one 401k plan. So what it does is it divides the cost then. So instead of one small business with maybe 3 or 4 employees having to burden the whole cost of running this plan, they could partner with 4 other ones and say, okay, together, it's only 1/5 the cost if there's 5 companies together. We can afford to do this for our employees.
So your barriers to providing that as a benefit for your employees are going to be significantly lower if you can find someone to pool the resources
with. You used to be able to do that only if you were an affiliated business. So if, let's say, the owner owned 2 businesses that were kind of cohabiting together between 2 things that worked well together, they could do something like that. But now it's unaffiliated businesses. So it really opens up the door for a financial advisor to say, hey, I have this plan. Anybody that would love to join that doesn't really think they can afford the cost can come in and split the cost. And every time somebody new joins, you're just dividing that
split.
cost. Yep.
Yeah.
And so it really enables small businesses to say, you know what, we'd love this additional benefit for our employees. Now we can afford it. One of the last things within the 401k is for if you're not full-time and you're part-time, there's a new piece here that allows you to participate. And it's kind of confusing, so I'm going to try to explain this as easy as possible. But the threshold is 500 hours in 3 12-month periods. And so in 3 years, you got to work 500 hours each year for 3 years.
Gotcha.
All right, so that's like half
So
time,
that's like
half
a quarter.
employment. Yeah.
It's like a quarter of employment, right?
Yeah.
2,080 is the
Yes.
typical.
Yeah,
so
but it's half of what the threshold used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be about 1,000 hours was kind of that threshold.
10
for,
hours a week is the bogey.
Yes. Yep. And so 500 hours in 3 12-month periods. If that happens, then they can participate in the 401k plan, but they aren't obligated to get the company match. So the company a lot of times will match your contributions up to a certain amount. In order to make this beneficial, they remove that obligation for the match for this group of employees. So
For part-time,
if I was part-time and I worked 3 years and met that requirement, I could then add my own money into the plan, but I would not get the match. So it doesn't put additional burden on the employer who may have a lot of part-time employees and can't afford to put the match in for everybody. But it allows you to save tax deferred for retirement. Now, this starts in 2021. That's when the actual time starts. So it actually wouldn't be until 2024 when the first part-time person could contribute, if that makes sense, because you have to have 3 years and you can't look backwards. It has to start in 2021. So again, a little confusing, but it's a benefit for part-time employees to say, hey, I have some income. I'd love to save it if I could. I'm just not eligible. Now they can be.
Awesome. This is a pause of your regularly scheduled show to bring you the dad joke of the week.
I love dad jokes.
And I want to let everyone know on the record that I did not preview this joke by Josh. So any reaction he has, this is authentic.
I'm ready.
All right, Josh, here we go. Dad joke of the week. Why did the dad take a while to decide on a haircut?
I don't know, Austin. Why?
I can't even say
you
it
can do
without
that laughing.
I want to say it all one time
Okay.
together because
So,
I can't laugh.
Why did the dad take a while to
Decide on a haircut.
decide on a haircut? Okay.
Because he had to mull it over.
Mull it over. I love it. I love it. I love dad jokes.
I know. My wife, shout out to Jenna, she actually got me a book called Dad Jokes. Terribly good dad jokes for Christmas.
Oh, that's nice.
So listeners can expect some of those
Dad
trickle
jokes.
in once in a
Oh,
while.
I love it.
And we're back with the Invested Dads.
All right, next up, 529 plans. So there were some changes around 529 plans. And Josh, take 5 seconds and just kind of explain what a 529 plan is and
Yeah.
then talk about those changes.
Yeah. So again, we're planning on a whole episode on college savings and college retirement or college planning in general. But a 529 plan is a college savings plan where you put money in and it grows tax free. And if you use it for qualified college expenses, which there's a whole fun stuff on that, it then has no tax on the distribution for those. So it's a great savings vehicle for college because there is the ability to grow your money without paying any tax and then use that additional amount for college, and there's no tax owed. So 529 plans are great. I think every state now offers their own plan. The cool thing is you don't have to use the one in your state. You can choose whatever you want based on benefits. Your state may offer some incentive to use theirs where you get some sort of tax deduction on your state taxes. But in general, it's a great way of saving for college expenses. So one of the things that changed here, and again, there's a lot that goes on 529s. We'll talk about that in our episode, but this one is just focusing on what changed. And what changed was they added the ability to use your 529 plan for college loans or college debt. So in other words, if I have a 529 plan, I'm done with school, so I have money left over, I could then use that to pay off those loans. Up to this point, you were not able to. It was only for incurred college expenses. They capped that at $10,000 limit per account. But they do allow, like a lot of other things within 529, you can roll it or move it for any direct relative of the beneficiary. So if my son is the beneficiary, it can be used for any direct relative of my son. So me, my wife, a brother or sister, and it even goes to cousins and stuff as well.
It's the funny provision to me is that if you had kids and you've been socking away money in 529 accounts all for 10, 15 years while they were young, and you still yourself, as the parent, have student loans, you can then rob your kid's college account to pay for your student loans.
Yep. And so, and I think this really was created for that idea of there's a lot of college debt out there, and there may be some unused college funds floating around. An example of that could be, so I have a son, and let's say he gets a full ride scholarship, but I've been saving a 529 plan. Now,
to be like his dad in college athletics.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And so he doesn't need any money now because he's covered with scholarships. Now, the 529 allows me to withdraw what would have been the cost, and I could take it out. But another option would be I could roll this and then use it to pay off debt for somebody else. So I could see benefits or uses for it, but ideally you'd be using it for expenses incurred for the beneficiary, not getting debt and then paying off that debt later. You just use it for the expense.
Or he could then use it for his
you
kids,
could keep it rolled to anybody
or whatever.
else.
So interesting.
But it's available and can be used there.
So I think one of the key changes with the Secure Act that is going to impact the most people probably is the changes around the IRA and what you can do with that. So there's a handful of different changes that we're going to talk about. But number one, a new change that you can do is if you are either A, having a child, or B, adopting a child, for as many times as you either have a child or adopt a child, so you can have 100 kids, and you can withdraw penalty-free $5,000 per adoption or birth out of your IRA. Now, this does still count as taxable income, so it's taxable at your normal income tax rate, but what you're avoiding at this point is the 10% early withdrawal penalty that you would have had associated had you done that under the old rules.
Yep. And so they have some caveats in there. It has to be an incurred expense, so you can't pull it out prior to the expense. So, you can't do for the early adoptions. You have to wait till the adoption is completed before you could withdraw it to reimburse yourself, in a sense, for those costs. And it works for IRAs, and I believe 401ks too are included in this. So really what you're doing is just makes it a qualified distribution, meaning there is no penalty, even if you're not 59 and a half when those penalties go away.
Now, I think one of the caveats also is that it has to be used for humans.
I don't think pets.
So I don't think you can be like, I'm adopting an Australian Shepherd, so I need $5,000. Yep. That might be in the next iteration, but for now, I don't think that's on the table. And then the RMD age changed as well, Josh, right?
Yeah. So, back to the adoption. There is some stuff they're working out, but there may be ability to repay that back in as well on top of your normal contributions. And so they may have the ability, if you're just, in a sense, borrowing the cost and then you're able to put it back in later. They're still working on that and how that works. There's not a lot of details yet on that, but that could come down the road. Because again, borrowing from retirement for anything is usually frowned upon. So if that's kind of your last resort,
whether or not it's frowned upon by the government on the legal side of things, it's frowned upon by your financial advisor, probably.
This is in a sense long-term money for retirement. To take it out for shorter-term expenses, even for something as great as a birth or an adoption, just makes it hard to recover from, because that compounding growth is reduced over that time frame. And that's, for most people, your IRAs and 401ks are your retirement accounts. There's not as many pensions out there that it's up to you to save for it. And so to take those withdrawals out and making it a little easier could hurt some people down in the long run.
Now, to be devil's advocate, because sometimes that's a good thing to have, just to hear the opposite side of the thing, I would wonder if the benefit to this is to avoid people taking on debt when they have those hospital bills for birth costs or whatever, instead of pulling it from an asset they already have. While it's not a great thing to pull from a appreciating retirement savings asset, if you are avoiding a bunch of debt, that could be a benefit to it.
Yeah. If you are 401ks loans allowed, is that a better, because you're forced to repay that anyways?
Correct.
Is that a better option? So there's a lot of stuff out there. But you're right. Yeah. There's reasons why it would make sense to do that.
So back to RMDs, or required minimum distributions, that age has now been moved from 70 and a half to 72. So it's moved back 1.5 years. It was always weird to me that was at a half a year, and that was due to the time whenever that was made back in the day. The actuarial tables said that was when it needed to happen.
People thought it'd be fun to
One
make
half
it more
year.
complex.
So everyone's calculating based on 365 days, and this is when I was born, divide that by 2. That half year is gone. So I think just to have a whole year, this is a big win.
Yes, I would. It's a lot easier to understand. People know when they turn 72. No one celebrates the 70 and a half birthday, or at least most people don't, I guess. And that's really, an RMD is required in the year you turn that. So if I turn 70, if I turn 70 in July 2nd, my 70 and a half isn't until January of the next year. So that's the year I have to take my required distribution. So it's really weird because that's actually the year I'm turning 71 by calendars. It's really confusing. So now they moved to 72, easier to understand.
Whole
it also
years.
gives you a little bit longer to grow that money, tax deferred.
Yep.
But that required distribution still has to come out. You got to pay the tax on the withdrawal. But the nice thing is, they give you an extra year and a half.
Exactly. And you can now contribute to an IRA after age 72. So it's, there's another, you're getting to the ability to have to take your money out later, but you're also getting the ability to contribute a little longer. So that's another benefit that's coming from that.
So prior to this law, you had to stop contributions once you hit 70 and a half. When the required distributions happened, you could no longer contribute even if you had earned income. They've removed that and said at any age you can contribute as long as you have the earned income that matches the criteria. And so for the 72 required distribution and the 72 for contributions, it's nice that there's a little more flexibility again with retirement savings. And with people working longer, it gives you that nice benefit there that if you are working longer and you can contribute, you can add a little more into that.
And there is, you can still do a spousal contribution as well, right?
Yes. Yep. So the spousal is if you file jointly, they don't have to have earned income as long as you together have earned income.
Gotcha. So what about QCDs?
Yeah. So QCDs are qualified charitable
There are so
distributions.
many acronyms
I know,
in this business.
It's a lot. So what that is, and there's a great podcast right there on just the tax advantages of giving through your IRA. But in a sense, you give from your IRA directly to a charitable organization, and that is then non-taxed on your income. It does not show as income as a distribution. And so the benefit there is that it's the most efficient way to give once those are available. You have to be 70 and a half. So here's another thing the IRS did. 70 and a half for required distributions is in the year you turn 70 and a half. So if I turn 70 and a half in November, January 1, I can start my required distribution. For qualified charitable distributions at 70 and a half, I actually have to be 70 and a half by the day.
On the day.
Yes.
Not
so
the-
I
in the
can't,
year.
in January, take my QCD. I have to wait until the day after I turn 70 and a half to start my QCDs.
So that's another good reason the 72 is in effect on the RMD side
it
of
fixes
things.
that.
So that fixes half
They
of it.
did not change the QCD at all. So it still stays 70 and a half. So
That's
in
a good
theory,
thing. Yeah.
at 70 and a half, someone could start giving to charity through their IRA even before they have required distribution. And you're still limited to $100,000 per year of a qualified charitable distribution, but you wouldn't have to worry about the RMD at that point. So there's a little bit of room in there between the two, but long story short, it's a great way to give, and now they haven't really touched that at all. Nothing's changed.
And I think the most controversial IRA change that is in this bill is relating to inherited IRAs, also known as stretch IRAs. And Josh, go ahead and explain that difference, the biggest change that could impact a lot of people.
Yeah. So up to this point, everything's been a positive, or at least a forward movement in what they were trying to do to help the average person in retirement. This is how they're going to pay for all those changes. So moving from 70.5 to 72 took away a lot of tax from the IRS. The government lost revenue by stretching that out a little farther when you had to start. So to pay for that, they decided that what they're going to do is eliminate the ability for someone who receives an inherited IRA. So if my parents pass away and I receive an IRA, I was able to, prior to this law, to take required distributions over my life expectancy, not my parents. So if my parents pass away at 80, their life expectancy was shorter than me at, let's say, 50. So that 30-year difference, I get to take fewer or lower distributions for longer. And now the IRS says, nope, what you have to do now is if you receive an inherited IRA, and we'll walk through some of the caveats. If I receive an inherited IRA, I have 10 years to get the full amount out of the inherited IRA, pay tax on it. I have to get it out of that tax-free or tax-deferred growth. So the people who this does not apply to are spouses. So the law prior to this, and it's continued for, if I'm a spouse and I receive an IRA, inherited IRA, I can roll it into my IRA and do it off of my life expectancy and treat it as my asset. And so that remains the same. For someone who's within 10 years of the person they receive it from, they also can do the life expectancy. The IRS says you guys were close enough, you're not really taking any big advantage on it, they're going to allow you to continue to do that. Or if you're disabled, that's the other exception to this, where they allow the regular life expectancy. But for everybody else, it's a 10-year window. You have to pay the tax, get it out of the IRA. It doesn't have to be equally through those 10 years. It could be in year 1, it could be year 5, year 7, year 10. It doesn't matter. By the 10th year, it's all out.
So really, it's in your best interest probably to pick the lowest tax year to do that in.
Yeah.
Or
spread it
wait,
out.
Yeah, spread it out, or wait till if you're going to retire in that 10-year period or something, that next year would be better, or whatever your lowest income year would be, or spread it out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so there's going to be a lot of tax planning that will need to happen in estate planning, because a lot of people were using these stretch IRAs and they were building them around some specialized trusts to do this. And they're kind of these like see-through conduit trusts where they allowed the IRA to stay in IRA, but the trust dictated those income distributions. Well, now that there's not these required distributions, but just a time frame, it kind of nullifies those. So there's going to be a lot of adjustments made for a lot of tax planning and estate planning. The other piece too is, when we talk through this, is if you are a minor and the child of the person, so not a grandkid or anything like that, but if you're a child of the person you inherit from and a minor, they require life expectancy RMD, so the regular off my age, the required distributions, until you reach whatever that full age of majority is. So
in your
18
state.
for most states.
Yeah.
Once I become an adult, and in that sense, I then have that 10-year window start. So at 18 to 28, then I had to get the rest of that money out.
Right.
So again, that's a little confusing for tracking all that, but more often than not, unless there's some tragedy, you're going to be over the age of 18 when you receive those inherited IRAs in general.
So could this make Roth conversions more lucrative as in financial planning for a lot of people?
Yeah, if I'm the IRA owner and I'm in a low tax bracket, it may make sense for me to pay in a lower tax bracket chunks of that IRA to get it out of a traditional IRA, move it to a Roth IRA. It will grow tax-free, and in those distributions for whoever inherits it, it'll be tax-free as well.
Right.
And so that would be a benefit. It's just a matter of saying, okay, who has the better tax bracket,
yes,
and who would be more beneficial paying that tax.
Right. All right, the fourth and final, and we're going to call it a bonus little discussion point around the Secure Act, is that this new law is going to increase the tax credit for small businesses to set up new retirement plans for their employees. Now, it used to be, and currently is, until this is actually fully enacted, used to be $500. Now that's $5,000. So the tax credit for these small businesses has gone up tenfold, which is huge.
Yeah, and it's up to $5,000. So whatever their expenses are, up to $5,000.
Gotcha.
So if it only cost me $2,000 to start this plan, I can't take a $5,000 credit on something I didn't incur.
That would be great.
That'd be nice. But what it does do is, again, for the first 3 years of the plan, it gives the ability for a small business, small company to kind of offset those costs to make it beneficial.
If you couple this with the above, with what we talked about earlier, where
grouping,
you're talking about the grouping, the MEP, not MAP, Austin, MEP. If you group those two together and you say, hey, this is really going to make it much more lucrative and much more attainable for small businesses to offer this as a benefit, as part of the package for their employees.
Yep.
So I think that's a very good thing there.
And then the other benefit is if they do auto-enrollment, meaning if I join the company, I'm automatically in the 401k. I have to opt out, which in my opinion is a great thing to have, because most people need to be saving, and forcing them into things sometimes is the best way to do it. They get an additional $500 credit. And so there's some nice things there that to give an incentive to companies to offer these plans.
So next up, I just wanted to say that I got a lot of this information. So as I'm on the research side of things. I don't necessarily deal with clients and the financial planning as much as Josh does, which is why he was instrumental in putting some of this discussion together today. So thanks for the preparation on that. But I got some high-level information and a great summary from a newsletter that I subscribe to called 7 a.m. Saturday that is actually provided and sent out weekly from our colleague, Adam Zerker. And so we'll throw the link in the show notes below on where you can sign up for that. But it's a really nice weekly sent out at 7 a.m. on Saturday newsletter where you can talk about financials and performance and stuff that's going on like that, as well as financial planning topics like this one. So that was something where I got some very high-level, wonderful summary of something that was easy to digest and understand as someone who's not as in the weeds maybe as Josh is. So if you're interested, click on the link below. You can totally sign up for that newsletter and get a nice email once a week with some good information on that.
Also, make sure you check out our free gift. If you go to our website, theinvesteddads.com, there's 8 principles of timeless investing. It's a free gift. You don't have to do anything.
We love free.
Besides, give us your email so we can send it to you. But there's 8 overarching investment themes there, helped you keep on track for your long-term goals. So check it out. It's free on our website, theinvesteddads.com.
And finally, to help us grow this podcast, we want to help a lot of people. We want to help you. We need your help. So we're doing a swag giveaway. Gotta love swag, to create some buzz through Apple Podcasts. So a couple things you need to do to get some swag, which that swag is an official The Invested Dads t-shirt.
Yes.
Which are pretty awesome. So what you need to do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, screenshot that review, and then email the screenshot to hello@theinvesteddads.com. And then we'll follow up with the first 25 subscribers to get their shirt size and mailing address to hook you up with your shirt. And these shirts are great. They're amazing. They look awesome. They're super soft and comfortable. I'm about to bust mine out, so it's pretty awesome. Shout out to Flag City Clothing in Findlay, Ohio for putting those together for us. And I do want to note that, unfortunately, we can't mail these all over the world due to customs and costs and stuff like that. So only for North American subscribers, those customs. And we're not talking custom shirts, those stinking customs. Trade war, hashtag. I don't know if that would have anything to do with it, but it is expensive. So North American subscribers only. So U.S., Canada, Mexico, we'll send you a shirt. Glad to do that. But yeah, so leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We're so excited if you would do that for us.
And in case you missed it or just started listening to us, check out our recent episode where we talk about dividend investing for dummies. So that's where we talk about what is dividend investing, why it matters, and what are different approaches to investing for long-term success.
And we're not calling you dummies. It's mostly us.
Yes. As we
or dividend investing for dads. Or Invested Dads. I don't know. Call it what you want, but check it out. It's another recent episode, and it's really great. So thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. If you like what we're doing, just click that subscribe button. We'd love to have you join us as we keep publishing these episodes every week. Thanks very much.
Yep. Talk to you later.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.